Good day, good people. Relevant Thoughts Blog is back. I'm your guy, Lewis to the T, and as always, I am excited to see you and excited that you decided to join us today. Look, I'm going to just jump right into this month's series. For the month of August, I'm entitling this series Just Good Advice. It's going to be called Good Advice because I think we all need some right about now. I need some and I want to share some that I've learned along the way. So I'm just going to get started. Today is Friday, August 6th, 2021. I'm your guy, Lewis to the T, and this week's topic in the series Good Advice is Make Sense. Make sense. And you see how the S is spelled, right? And I'm going to drop a link to where you can get this shirt from. This shirt was designed by my guy, Garrett Brown. So I want you to support him. Of course, always Black business first. If you can get it there, why get it elsewhere? Good advice. All right, so I'm going to talk about Make Sense, and no, this entire video will not be about the baby, but I am going to use him as an example. I'm also going to use myself, and I'm also going to talk about you guys a little bit as I talk about this topic. Make sense as it pertains to, finances and celebrity and reputation, your health, your wealth, all of those things, we have to start making sense. One of the reasons why there was so much fallout behind what the baby, the rapper, said, if you haven't seen it, just Google it, it'll pop right up, I'm sure, is that it just didn't make sense to us. It kind of was out of nowhere. So he made some disparaging remarks about the LGBTQ community. He made some odd statements in regard to HIV/AIDS, and he received a lot of backlash and a lot of public outcry. As a result, he started being pulled out of music festivals across the country, which, as we know, for artists is their life's blood. Concerts, performing live, this is where they make the bulk of their money oftentimes. And so for somebody like him, who has been a top artist, he makes even more than the average person who's going to show up to perform at this concert. So we know that the more he's pulled out, the more his finances are impacted. And as I began to read more up on him and the situation in regard to him being pulled, I realized along the way that he actually could have sustained himself as far as being a part of these festivals, because the owner, I think, of multiple festivals made a request of him. And that was to do a video apology before Lollapalooza, which I think was festival number 4 in his 7-festival lineup for the year, going through the end of 2021. So through December 31st, as far as I know, he had like 4 more festivals lined up. And he was asked to do a public apology via video. He did do an apology. The first 2 didn't go over so well. The third one, you could tell that maybe he had some help and some reflection. It was much more polished. People didn't necessarily receive it because they felt like it was a PR stunt. But when I looked at, the entire situation, he was asked, hey, do this live video. We'll play it before the concert. You can still do Lollapalooza. You can still maintain the rest of the festivals. He didn't do the video. Or at least he didn't do the video and get it to them within the time frame that they asked for. They say they didn't receive it at all, and hence he was pulled from Lollapalooza. He was pulled from a day in Vegas. There was just several events over the course of maybe 2 days that he was pulled from. So in total, he lost revenue from 7 tours, 7 performances, 7 live performances. And again, with somebody of his stature, I'm sure that was, high 6 figures is probably what he's paid for those performances. Not alone, and that's not including like the merchandise he's allowed to sell, the music that would probably stream since people see him there, people that knew him, people that didn't know him. And the reason I'm using him as an example is because he's in the news. But anybody can make this mistake. And I read something recently that said holding on to your ego will have you holding on to a mistake that will cost you. And I read that, multiple times. Holding your ego will allow you to hold on to a mistake that will cost you, all because you don't want to back down from your original stance or your original mistake, or say out loud that I did something wrong. Your ego will tell you to stand your ground. Your ego will tell you to be strong and that everybody else is against you. And at the end of the day, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make logical sense, and it doesn't make financial sense. And I'm using him as an example on a large scale, a lot of money involved, public reputation involved, all of these people getting involved, these entities and organizations, and it just got really, really big. And not to say that it wasn't warranted or that it was blown out of proportion, but it could have been prevented. It could have been prevented initially, but okay, it happened. You did it. You said it. You were out there, but it could have been rectified really quickly by just following some simple guidance given to you by people who maybe they didn't have your best interest at heart. Maybe all they had in mind was your what you could bring to them financially, but it was still good advice, and he should have taken it. But I'll bring this down to a personal level. As an individual, I remember stepping out there for people at jobs. I'm a strong-minded person. I'm highly opinionated. If I believe in something, I'm all in. And I remember being younger, very militant about my beliefs and how I express them. Still militant about my beliefs, but how I express them has evolved. They are relevant. They are timely. I recognize the place and the space for which to show my disdain for something, or my outrage for something, and know when and who to stand up for. But in my own life, I remember being at jobs where people would complain about something, I would agree with them, but I would be the spokesperson. So I'm putting myself on Front Street for all of these people, including myself, and I'm loud, and even though I'm right and I'm telling the truth, it wasn't my fight and it wasn't my battle. And at the end of the day, it cost me reputation. It cost me standing within the organization, and it eventually cost me my job, whether I had to leave on my own, or when it came down time to do a downsizing or a layoff, I'm first on the list because I do amazing work, but this guy always has something to say. He's making us feel uncomfortable, and maybe they should have felt uncomfortable, but it wasn't my battle, and it didn't cost them, it cost me. So in all that we do, when we're approaching something, it should make sense. And I love this shirt because it's telling us both messages. Make sense logically because of the word, the way the word sense is spelled, and makes sense as it pertains to your finances and it pertains to your dollars. And the last example I'm going to use, and I have to give a shout out to Badass Vegan, my guy John. He always posts these amazing videos and memes, and he'll also write something above them that just makes sense, basically, pun intended. We can't hold on even to the way that we eat, these diets that have been passed down, traditionally in our families. The way that we eat is not making sense. And I definitely want to use it as an example because it's not always about the immediate financial impact, but sometimes it's long-term financial impact. And just like I said, your ego will have you holding on to a decision that will cost you. Tradition will have us holding on to something that will cost us. And the way that we eat sometimes, I listen to people talk about heredity as it pertains to coronary heart disease, as it pertains to high blood pressure, hypertension, diabetes, all these things. I don't discount the fact that there are genetics involved, but I do know that it doesn't make sense to blame genetics if you're smoking cigarettes and drinking Pepsi and eating fried chicken 5 times a week. I use fried chicken as an example. No, I'm not talking about just Black people, but that is something that I think is common amongst people who don't eat well. It could be pork, the amount that you're consuming doesn't make sense. Do you need 12 pieces of bacon in the morning? I'm just asking. I'm not trying to convert anybody. You don't have to become a vegan or a vegetarian, but you should watch what you eat, how you eat. Eventually, it impacts your health, and your health impacts your wealth. If you don't pay for it now, you'll pay for it long term. If you don't pay for it, maybe your kids have to pay for it, or your caretaker has to pay for it. So, I hope that didn't seem like too much of a stretch, going from the baby to myself, to the way in which we eat, the way in which people eat. It all has to make sense. It has to make logical sense, and it has to make financial sense. And ultimately, we have to stop allowing our ego, stop allowing our tradition, and stop allowing our anger to guide us when we're trying to make sense in this world. Be able to stand up for ourselves, speak for others, and give just some good advice. But at the end of the day, allow it all to just make sense. So that's my thought for the day. That's the Relevant Thoughts blog for the day. I'm your guy, Lewis to the T. You'll be able to see this video on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and a little snippet on Twitter because, hey, that's their rule. I'll see you guys next week. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.